Dubai billionaire prince gave a stranded mother of triplets a ride to Dubai, and from there, their love story began. She said, her voice shaking. But you flew into my world like a miracle. And you reminded me, he replied, that wealth means nothing without someone to share it with. Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. Murtala Muhammad International Airport was a hive of noise and movement. Tired travelers rolled their luggage with frustration as delays echoed over the intercom. Children cried, boarding announcements crackled in heavy accents, and impatient businessmen tapped at phones while sipping lukewarm coffee. In the middle of it all, Miriam Ijeoma Okafor tried to keep her sanity. Michelle, get down from that chair before you fall, she called out, lunging forward just in time to catch her daughter's dangling leg. The tiny girl let out a giggle and dropped to the floor, completely unbothered by the panic in her mother's voice. Nearby, Michael was swinging his backpack like a sword, while Miracle tried to unzip a stranger's carry-on bag. Oh God, Miriam whispered, rushing to separate them. Her head was pounding. She hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, and the tight knot in her stomach had nothing to do with hunger. It was pure anxiety. Traveling alone with 4-year-old triplets was not for the faint-hearted. But Miriam had no choice. This trip to Dubai was her only hope. Her cousin had secured her a housekeeping job in a hotel on the city's outskirts. It wasn't glamorous, but it would be the first real job she'd had since giving birth. The father of her children had walked out the moment the doctor confirmed triplets, claiming it was a spiritual punishment he wanted no part of. Since then, it had been Miriam against the world. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small pack of biscuits, handing one to each child while murmuring instructions like a worn-out referee. Don't fight. No noise. Please behave. The triplets munched quietly for a few seconds, until Michelle began crying because Michael took her last biscuit. Michael, why would you do that? She wasn't eating it fast. You don't snatch from your sister. She's not crying. She's pretending. Enough, Miriam nearly shouted, then paused when she noticed the stares. Again. An older woman nearby leaned closer and whispered something to the man beside her. Miriam could feel their judgment burning into her skin. Her throat tightened. People were always so quick to label a struggling mother careless, overbred, irresponsible. They didn't know the number of nights she'd spent crying silently, holding her babies while wondering if they'd eat the next day. She sat down and pulled Miracle into her lap. The little girl wiped her teary eyes on Miriam's blouse and whispered, Mummy, are we going to sleep in the airplane? Yes, baby, Miriam said, stroking her hair gently. Well, sleep in the sky. She didn't notice the man in the dark sunglasses watching her from the glass walls of the VIP lounge. Khalid Al Maktoum, billionaire businessman, was sipping cardamom tea while reviewing a confidential investor report when something made him pause. He looked up and saw her. The woman was clearly exhausted. Her hair was tied in a rushed bun, a threadbare handbag slung over her shoulder, and her clothes spoke of simple, practical choices. Yet there was something magnetic about her. Something in the way she knelt down to clean Miracle's face with a wet wipe while whispering, You'll be okay, my love. Khalid tilted his head slightly, watching as she comforted all 3 children in sequence without ever raising her voice again. Her eyes looked as if they carried stories of many storms, but her voice remained gentle, even when tired. Who is she? He murmured to himself. No one of importance, sir, said Hamza, his assistant, looking up from a file. Just a mother, struggling with 3 kids. Khalid's brow furrowed. No one of importance? He echoed. Then why can't I stop looking at her? As boarding time approached, the airline announced another delay. Groans filled the terminal. Miriam closed her eyes and muttered a quiet prayer under her breath. Her legs felt weak. The triplets were now restless and sweaty. Her blouse was damp from Miracle's tears and Michelle's juice spill. I don't know how I'll survive this flight, she whispered, half laughing to herself. God, just help me hold it together. At that moment, She heard a deep voice behind her. "Excuse me." She turned and her breath caught. The man before her looked like he had walked out of a movie scene. Tall, poised, elegant. His sunglasses were now off, revealing eyes the color of warm honey. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said with a polite smile. "But I couldn't help noticing. You seem to be having a rather difficult day." Miriam blinked. "That obvious, huh?" He chuckled. "Not in a bad way, just noticed." He bent slightly to speak to the kids, smiling as Michael frowned at him. "My name is Khalid," he said gently. "Would it be all right if I offered you and your children a ride to Dubai?" Miriam stiffened. "I'm sorry. What? I have a private jet. It's waiting on the tarmac now. You'll be comfortable. I can assure you it's safe." She stepped back, heart pounding. "Why? Would you offer that to a stranger?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Because sometimes," he said, "life puts people in your path for a reason, and I'm not the kind of man to ignore that." The moment she said nothing, Khalid knew she was weighing 1,000 unspoken fears, and she had every right to. He wasn't just any man offering a favor. He was offering a flight across continents, alone, to a mother of 3 toddlers who didn't know him from Adam. In a world where even handshakes weren't always safe, trust had become a rare currency. He watched her eyes flicker, first to Michelle, who was tugging at her dress, then to Miracle, who was nibbling on biscuit crumbs from the floor, then finally to Michael, who was quietly eyeing Khalid with suspicion. Miriam straightened her spine and said carefully, "You don't even know my name." "True," he said with a slow nod. "But I know you're strong. You've kept 3 young children calm, mostly, in an airport full of stress. That's not a small thing." "I'm just a mother. And I'm just a man," he replied. "But here we are, having a conversation that may change both our lives." There was a quiet confidence in the way he spoke. Not arrogant, just sure. Like a man who had everything but still searched for something more. Earlier that day, a few hours before, Khalid had been in a conference room at the Eco-Atlantic Business Tower, closing a $1 million tech infrastructure deal. Head sat at the head of the table, flanked by lawyers, partners, and Nigerian investors eager to join his expanding telecom empire. He should have been satisfied, but something had felt hollow. Head flown into Lagos 3 days ago, but hadn't smiled once. He had women chasing him from every corner of the globe, luxury at his fingertips, and a jet that could fly him to Paris for dinner and back before midnight. Yet today it wasn't business that caught his eye. It was the chaos and calm of one woman. There was something unexplainable about her, a depth in her eyes, a storm hidden beneath grace. He had noticed how she wiped Miracle's nose with her sleeve when the tissue ran out, how she shared her water bottle among the 3 children instead of drinking it herself. That's what stayed with him. Not beauty, sacrifice. Back at the terminal, Miriam folded her arms over her chest, still unsure. "You're not afraid I might run away with your kindness? Or report you?" Khalid chuckled. "If you run, he'll find you. And if you report me, well, I'd rather be known as the man who offered help than the man who walked away." She smirked. "Smooth talker." "I try," he said with a boyish grin. She exhaled deeply and knelt to speak to her kids. "Michael, Michelle, Miracle. Someone wants to help us get to Dubai faster. On a very special airplane." Michelle clapped immediately. "With food?" Michael was skeptical. "Is it safe?" Miracle just hugged her leg tightly and whispered, "Can we go, Mummy? I'm tired." Miriam swallowed a lump in her throat. She turned to Khalid. "Okay," she said quietly, "but if anything looks or feels strange, I'm out." "You'll be in control the entire time," Khalid said. "You're not my guest. You're my priority." He made a quick call, murmured something in Arabic, and moments later, a sharply dressed man with a kind face approached. "This is Hamza," Khalid said. "My personal assistant and friend. He'll escort your bags and get everything sorted while we move to the private wing." Hamza gave a small bow. "Ma'am, children, it's a pleasure." Miriam was still in disbelief as she gathered their few belongings. She had packed all they owned into 2 suitcases, one torn at the handle. No toys, no fancy clothes, just the basics. Khalid silently took one suitcase from her hand. You don't have to. I know, he said gently, but I want to. As they walked through a quiet, secured section of the airport, Miriam felt like Alice tumbling down a rabbit hole. She wasn't sure if it was safe or real or even logical, but something inside her, maybe desperation, maybe instinct, kept whispering, trust him, just for now. The kids were excited now, chattering about flying high and drinking juice in the sky. Miracle held Khalid's finger without hesitation, while Michael looked around like a little bodyguard on alert. As the private jet came into view, a sleek white Gulfstream G700 with a gold Falcon insignia near the tail, Miriam stopped walking. This is insane, she whispered. People like me don't step into things like this. Khalid turned to her. Then maybe it's time someone reminded you what you're worth. Miriam had never seen anything like it in her life. The private jet gleamed under the tarmac lights like a white pearl polished by the desert wind. As the cabin door opened, the scent of fresh vanilla and leather wafted into the warm evening air. Gold-accented steps descended slowly, and a smartly dressed flight attendant in navy smiled at them from the top of the stairs. Welcome aboard, Mr. Al Maktoum, she said, bowing slightly. And guests. Khalid nodded politely. They're not just guests. Treat them like royalty. Miriam blinked, unsure whether to step forward or run back to the terminal. She was still trying to process everything. Was this how movies started? Or kidnappings? Was this kindness or a test? Khalid turned to her, his voice gentle. You can hold my hand if it makes you feel safer. She didn't take his hand, but she took a breath and walked forward. The children needed her brave. She'd made harder decisions before. Inside the jet, the moment they stepped in, her jaw dropped. The interior was surreal. Cream-colored leather seats, smooth wood paneling, soft recessed lighting, and a plush white carpet that made no sound under their feet. It looked less like an airplane and more like a floating five-star hotel. A large screen displayed a map of their route, and two stewardesses were already preparing juices and fruit platters for the kids. Michael gasped first. Is this a flying hotel? Michelle twirled. It's so shiny. Miracle stared at the ceiling. Mummy, the lights look like stars. Miriam didn't answer. She was still stunned. Come, Khalid said, guiding her gently to one of the wide armchairs. Sit. You don't have to be afraid. Miriam sat slowly, brushing her hand across the seat like she was afraid she'd stain it. One of the attendants brought warm towels and a tray of snacks. Would you like some apple juice for the children? She asked kindly. Yes, please, Miriam whispered. And just like that, the children were quiet, sipping from tall cups while munching on sliced strawberries. She looked at them, her three precious miracles who had never known luxury, who had never been this calm on any transport in their lives. The usual stress of loud passengers, dirty buses, hunger, and discomfort, gone. They were safe. And for the first time since she bought that economy ticket, so was she. Once the jet was airborne and the seatbelt signs were off, Khalid unbuttoned his suit jacket and moved to the seat beside her. I hope this isn't too overwhelming, he said softly. She let out a small laugh. Everything about this is overwhelming. He smiled. Tell me about you. Not just the chaos I saw at the airport. The real you. Miriam raised an eyebrow. You want the unfiltered version? Please. She inhaled deeply. I'm 29. I have 3 children, triplets, obviously. I used to work as a receptionist until I got pregnant. Their father vanished when he heard the word triplets. I haven't seen him since. We've been surviving off little jobs and my cousin's help. That's why I'm going to Dubai. She found me a hotel job. Khalid nodded thoughtfully. You've done so much. Alone. I had to, she said. I couldn't fall apart. Not when 3 lives depended on me. He looked at her like she was made of something divine. You have no idea how rare your kind of strength is. The rest of the flight passed like something out of a dream. Khalid helped Michelle build a tower out of wooden blocks he had on board for visiting guests' children. He read a short story to Miracle, who dozed off mid-sentence with her thumb in her mouth, curled into his side. Michael, after much reluctance, warmed up and asked Khalid endless questions about the jet, clouds, and Dubai. "You're like a prince," Michael declared, arms crossed as if judging Khalid's answers. Khalid chuckled. "Not a prince, just a man with a jet." Later, Miriam found herself laughing more than she had in years. Khalid told her about his own childhood, how he lost his mother young, how he never felt connected to most of the people around him because of wealth and expectations, how he longed for something real. "I don't know why I noticed you in that airport," he said as the city lights of Dubai came into view. "But I'm glad I did." She stared at him, searching his eyes. "Do you always rescue random mothers and take them across countries?" "No," he replied seriously. "Only the ones who remind me what love looks like." Dubai rose beneath them like a land carved from golden dreams. From her seat by the window, Miriam could hardly believe what her eyes were seeing. As the jet descended, the view stretched endlessly, towering skyscrapers gleaming under the moonlight, desert sands glowing bronze under highway lights, and ribbons of water weaving through man-made islands like artwork on a living canvas. "This doesn't feel real," she whispered, pressing her palm against the window. "It is," Khalid replied beside her, voice low. "And it's only the beginning." Her heart pounded. The children had fallen asleep one by one. Miracle tucked into Khalid's side again, Michelle curled like a kitten on the couch, and Michael sprawled across a recliner with his shoes kicked off. For the first time in a long time, peace filled the space around her. And it terrified her. The jet touched down with smooth grace, gliding along the private runway of a luxury airfield just outside the main airport. A black Mercedes Maybach and a child-friendly SUV waited on the tarmac, engines humming quietly. As the flight attendant carefully woke the children, Miriam stood slowly, nerves tingling. She looked at Khalid. "I still don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't know what this is." He stepped closer, his eyes calm. "Then let's not name it yet. Let's just live it one breath at a time." She stared at him. "Are you always this poetic?" "Only when I meet women I don't want to forget." Her heart did a quiet flip. The ride to Khalid's estate was silent at first. The triplets were asleep in the back seat, heads resting against each other. Miriam sat beside Khalid in the back of the Maybach, watching the city lights flicker across his sharp jawline. "So," she said finally, "what do people call you? Sheik? CEO? Prince Charming?" He laughed. "Khalid is fine. Titles are for newspapers." She smiled. "Then I guess it'll be plain old Miriam." He glanced at her. "There's nothing plain about you." Heat rushed to her cheeks. Arrival at Al Maktoum estate. When the gates to the estate opened, Miriam sat up straighter in awe. It was like entering a world only described in fantasy books. Tall palm trees lined a stone-paved driveway that curved through gardens dotted with lantern-lit fountains. The villa ahead was vast but soft in design, its architecture a delicate blend of modern elegance and Middle Eastern heritage. The staff came forward quietly. 2 nannies, a housekeeper, a chef, and each bowed politely to Miriam and the children. No one stared. No one whispered. They moved with practiced grace and sincere warmth. "You're free to tell them whatever you're comfortable with," Khalid whispered. "To them, you're a guest of honor." She looked at him in disbelief. "They're bowing to me. You're the strongest woman I've met. They're bowing to that." Miriam was shown to a private wing of the estate, a villa within the villa. It had 3 bedrooms, a large living space, and a private patio facing the ocean. The triplets each had their own rooms, already prepared with stuffed toys, soft bedding, and welcome notes written in colorful English. She turned slowly, unable to process the generosity. "You planned all this? I guessed you wouldn't say yes unless the children were your first thought," Khalid replied from behind her. "So I started with them." Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to him. "No one's ever thought of me like this. Not since my mother died." He stepped closer. "Then let me be the one who does." That night, after bathing the triplets and laying them into their beds, Miriam stepped out onto the patio. The ocean was a quiet song in the background, the sky scattered with stars like scattered prayers. She wrapped a robe around her shoulders and sat alone on the swing chair, sipping chamomile tea brought by the staff. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a fighter or a beggar or a burden. She felt seen. She heard soft steps behind her. "I thought you'd be asleep," Khalid said gently. "I didn't want to waste this view," she replied without turning. He sat beside her, silent for a moment. "Do you believe in destiny, Miriam?" She looked at him. "I used to believe in survival. That was all. And now?" She glanced at the softly lit villa, where her babies were sleeping in peace for the first time in a long time. "I'm starting to think survival brought me here." He smiled. "I hope you stay." The sun rose like molten gold over Dubai, painting the estate in warm hues of amber and blush. Miriam awoke to the sound of soft giggles echoing down the hall. At first, she thought she was dreaming, until a loud thump followed by a high-pitched, "I got you," confirmed otherwise. She rushed out of bed, still adjusting to the luxury of crisp white sheets and air conditioning that didn't buzz like a dying bee. She found her triplets in the hallway, running barefoot in matching pajamas, chasing each other with teddy bears. "Mommy, look," Miracle beamed, waving a golden bear in the air. "This one smells like vanilla." Before Miriam could respond, one of the nannies appeared, smiling gently. "Good morning, ma'am. Would you like some tea brought to your room? The children are welcome to have breakfast in the garden." Miriam blinked. "Garden?" The nanny laughed lightly. "Yes, Mr. Khalid has arranged for a child-friendly breakfast picnic by the fountain." She nodded slowly, still dazed. "Please, they'll join them." The garden was breathtaking. Roses and hibiscus framed by curved hedges, the sweet scent of jasmine in the air. A picnic-style table had been set near a circular marble fountain, complete with fresh pancakes, fruits, and juice boxes with the kids' names written in swirly lettering. Khalid was already there, wearing a crisp white shirt and linen trousers. He was helping Michael pour syrup over pancakes with the patience of a man used to small chaos. "You're up early," she said as she approached. He looked up and smiled. "I couldn't miss the most important breakfast of the week." Miriam sat slowly, absorbing the moment. It felt surreal, watching her children eat in peace without worry, without fear. No landlord pounding at the door. No hunger, no shame. Just sunlight, just laughter, just warmth. Later that afternoon, Khalid invited her to join him on a short tour of the estate. The children were resting after swimming in the indoor pool, and the nannies offered to watch over them. Miriam hesitated at first but eventually agreed. They strolled through archways carved with calligraphy, past quiet courtyards and into a small rooftop garden filled with herbs and desert flowers. "I had this part built after my mother passed," Khalid said, plucking a sprig of mint. "She used to grow herbs for tea and healing oils. She said nature was the softest form of love." Miriam touched a small jasmine bud. "I think your mother would have liked me." He turned to her, soft and serious. "She would have loved you." Their eyes met. Miriam felt something shift in her chest, like a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for 4 years finally released. That evening, after tucking the children into bed, Miriam checked her phone. 10 missed calls from her aunt. 1 voice note. She pressed play. "Miriam, where are you? I heard you took your children to Dubai? With a man? Who is he? What are you doing? You are disgracing the family, going with a stranger like some desperate—" She stopped it, her stomach twisted, not because of shame, but because of how numb her heart felt to those words now. She walked to the window, looking out at the glowing skyline of Dubai. A soft knock came at the door. It was Khalid holding 2 mugs of warm spiced milk. "I thought you might need this." She hesitated, then took one, hands brushing. "Thank you." They stood in silence for a moment. "I used to think I had to live small," she finally whispered, "that it was my punishment for being a single mother, for being left behind." Khalid didn't speak, but his gaze never left her. "But now I'm starting to dream again, and that scares me more than anything." He stepped closer. "Then let's dream together, Miriam. And if you fall, I promise to catch you." Tears pooled in her eyes, but they were soft tears, free tears, not the kind she used to cry into pillows. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The following day began with a surprising calm. Miriam no longer felt like a guest in Khalid's estate. It was as though something inside her had started to settle, as if the storm she had carried for years was finally learning to rest. After breakfast, Khalid invited her and the children to join him on a visit to one of his private developments, a tech-driven hospital project for mothers and children. Miriam was hesitant. "You really want us all to come? Even the triplets?" Khalid chuckled. "Especially the triplets. Their energy might just inspire the architects to design better playrooms." The ride to the site was smooth and luxurious. Miriam sat in the back of Khalid's sleek black SUV, the children securely buckled beside her, munching on cookies and chatting about the big building they were about to see. As they pulled into the construction site, Miriam was taken aback by the scale of the project. A massive white building curved like a gentle wave stood halfway completed, surrounded by glass panels and gardens in the making. "This is for women like you," Khalid said as they walked through the site in protective gear. "Mothers, widows, single parents. I want a space that heals not just the body but the dignity." Miriam paused. "Why me?" He turned to face her, eyes soft. "Because in your strength, I saw the pain you hide. In your children, I saw resilience. You reminded me of what matters most." She looked away, her chest tight. "I don't think I'm used to being seen this deeply." "Well," he said gently, "then let me be the first of many." Later that night, as Miriam helped the triplets change into their pajamas, her phone buzzed again. Another message from her aunt. "You left for Dubai without telling us, and now strangers are calling your name. The man you're with, his name is all over the news here. You're trending on Twitter, Facebook. They say he's involved with a Nigerian woman and her children. People are calling you all sorts of names." Miriam's hands trembled slightly as she read. She hadn't realized how quickly news traveled, nor how fast judgment could fall. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly. Khalid entered just then, catching the look in her eyes. "What's wrong?" She handed him the phone. His eyes scanned the message. Then he calmly placed the phone down and sat beside her. "I knew this would come," he said quietly. "People don't understand what they can't control. But Miriam, I do not hide the things I cherish." Her breath caught. "But I'm not used to being cherished." He gently took her hand. "Then let this be the beginning." The next day, Khalid posted a picture on his social media, a simple one. It was of Miriam and the triplets standing in the garden, laughing with flowers in their hair. His caption read, "In a world full of wealth and noise, I found peace in the laughter of 3 children and the grace of 1 woman. I do not owe the world an explanation for choosing love over tradition. This is who I choose." Within hours, the post went viral. There were mixed reactions. Some praised him, others criticized. But Khalid remained calm. Miriam, overwhelmed, stayed off the internet. But when the children ran into her room with flowers they had picked and cards they had made saying, "Mommy is a queen," she smiled for the first time in hours. That evening, Khalid took Miriam for a walk under the starlit sky, just the 2 of them. They walked in silence until they reached the reflecting pool near the estate's edge. He stopped and turned to her. "Miriam," he began, "I know this is all happening fast, but when I saw you and your children that day at the airport, something shifted. It wasn't coincidence. It was fate." She didn't speak. "I don't want to rush you, but I want you to know, if you ever decide to stay here in Dubai, permanently, there will always be room in my heart. And in this home." She looked up at him, heart pounding. "You don't have to promise me forever," she whispered. "But if you promise me peace, I'll stay." He smiled, drawing her close. "Then I promise you peace, Miriam. I promise you calm after every storm." The sun rose softly over Dubai's golden skyline, bathing the estate in a gentle hue of hope. Miriam stood by the balcony of her guest room, watching the triplets chase each other through the manicured lawn below. Their laughter rose like a melody in the morning air. She pressed a hand to her heart. Peace. It had been so long since she felt it. And Khalid, he hadn't just offered her comfort. He had given her safety, respect, and a future she never dared imagine. But now came the moment she had to choose. Would she stay, The decision wasn't easy. Calls from Nigeria kept coming. Her aunt, cousins, even some church members, most offering unsolicited advice. You don't even know him. What if he dumps you and your children in a foreign land? You should come back. This isn't our way. Miriam sat in the living room staring at her phone. Her eyes were heavy from sleepless nights and prayers. She knew Khalid was genuine. She had seen it in his eyes, his actions, the way he treated her kids like royalty. But doubts had a way of slipping in when silence grew loud. Khalid joined her that afternoon with 2 cups of mint tea. He placed one beside her and sat quietly. "Have you decided?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she said honestly. "This feels like a dream, and dreams don't last forever." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he picked up his cup and sipped slowly. Then he said, "Miriam, you're not just choosing to stay in a house or a country. You're choosing whether to believe in new beginnings. I won't trap you. I won't pressure you. But know this, if you go, I will feel the absence like the sun disappearing from the sky." Her eyes welled up with tears. She whispered, "I'm scared." "I am too," he said. "But I'm more afraid of never loving you fully." Later that evening, Khalid had the children gathered around a large table. He handed each of them a colored sheet and a pencil. "Today, I want you to draw what home looks like," he said, smiling. Shinonso drew the garden where he played with Khalid. Chimamanda drew herself on Khalid's back, laughing. Chitara drew her mom holding hands with Khalid, with 3 stick children in between them. When Miriam came in and saw the drawings, something in her cracked. The triplets had already made their decision. This was home now. That night, she sent a voice note to her aunt. "I know many won't understand this, but I've been fighting for survival for too long. I've earned the right to choose joy. I'm not leaving because I hate home. I'm staying because I finally found one. Please respect that." She switched off her phone and sighed. Then she walked out into the courtyard where Khalid waited. He stood, hopeful. "I'm staying," she said softly. A smile broke across his face. Relief, joy, and something deeper. He walked to her, cupped her face gently, and said, "Welcome home, Miriam." The desert night in Dubai was unlike anything Miriam had ever experienced. The stars sparkled like scattered diamonds above the dunes, and the air carried the crisp scent of jasmine, spices, and stillness. Khalid had invited her for a private dinner beneath the open sky, not in a grand hotel, not in his palace-like mansion, but out in the quiet of the desert, where the city lights couldn't chase them. Miriam stood barefoot on a Persian rug laid over warm sand, wearing a flowing peach abaya Khalid had gifted her. Simple, modest, and graceful. The triplets were fast asleep back at the estate under the care of his trusted housekeeper, Fatima. It was just the 2 of them now. There was no waiter, no fancy menu. Just a low table filled with carefully chosen dishes. Grilled chicken, hummus, dates, fresh fruits, and mint tea. Khalid served her himself. "This place," he said as they sat across each other, "is where I come when I want to hear my own heart." Miriam smiled, feeling a strange mix of nerves and calm. "And what is your heart saying tonight?" He looked at her deeply, his voice low and sincere. "It's saying you were never a coincidence. You were a prayer I didn't know I made." She swallowed hard, caught between awe and vulnerability. "I didn't plan any of this," she admitted. "When I met you at that airport, I was just a tired mother, unsure how I would survive the next week." "And now?" he asked. She looked around at the soft, flickering lanterns, the stars overhead, the warmth in his eyes. "Now, I feel like I've been seen, not as a burden, not as a mother of 3, just Miriam." After dinner, Khalid stood and offered her his hand. Music began to play from a small speaker, soft, instrumental Arabic melodies that rose and fell like waves. "May I have this dance?" he asked. She laughed, blushing. "I haven't danced in years." He leaned closer. "Neither have I. Let's be foolish together." She took his hand. In the middle of the desert, under stars that watched in silence, Khalid and Miriam danced slowly. No choreographed steps, no expectations, just the quiet movement of two souls learning each other's rhythm. Her head rested against his chest. His hand settled respectfully on her back. The night wrapped around them like a secret. When the music stopped, the silence was louder than ever. They didn't move. Khalid slowly raised her chin with one hand, meeting her eyes. "If I kiss you now, it won't be just for tonight," he said. "It will be a promise." Miriam's breath caught. "Then promise me," she whispered. Their lips met, gently, reverently. It was not rushed or desperate. It was a kiss soaked in gratitude, in respect, in the quiet power of two wounded hearts finding refuge in each other. When they pulled apart, tears shimmered in her eyes. Khalid rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "I'm falling in love with you." She closed her eyes. "And I'm beginning to believe I deserve it," she replied. 3 weeks after that unforgettable desert night, Khalid made it official. He wanted Miriam, not just in his house, not just in his heart, but as his wife. Not because she was a mother of 3, not because she needed help, but because he couldn't imagine life without her laughter, her strength, and the way she softened every hardened edge in him. The proposal wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. One evening, while Miriam was teaching the triplets how to plant flowers in the estate's garden, Khalid walked in barefoot, holding a velvet box and a single hibiscus flower. He got down on one knee, right there in the soil, while Chitara clapped and Shinanso whispered, "Uncle Khalid wants to marry Mummy." Miriam blinked at the simple diamond ring, then at the man before her, the billionaire who had every reason to chase perfection but instead chose her, in all her glorious imperfection. "Miriam," he said softly, "you've already made this house a home. Will you make me a husband?" The tears came before her words did. "Yes," she breathed, "I will." They didn't want crowds. They didn't want society's noise or paparazzi flashes. Instead, Khalid arranged a small, elegant wedding under the desert stars, just like the night they had first danced. Miriam wore a custom-made white gown with lace that shimmered like moonlight. Her veil was held in place by a jeweled pin shaped like 3 little stars, one for each of her children. The triplets walked her down the sandy aisle, holding tiny lanterns and grinning with pride. Khalid waited at the altar built from carved cedarwood and ivory cloth, his heart pounding like the drums of joy in his homeland. The vows were not long. They didn't need to be. "I never thought love would find me at an airport," she said, her voice shaking. "But you flew into my world like a miracle. And you reminded me," he replied, "that wealth means nothing without someone to share it with. You, Miriam, are my gold, my peace, my forever." Under 1,000 stars, as wind whispered their names into the sand, Khalid and Miriam became husband and wife. After the ceremony, there was laughter, light music, and barefoot dancing again, this time with the triplets twirling around their feet. Khalid lifted Shinanso onto his shoulders while Chimamanda and Chitara clung to Miriam's gown. "Are we one big family now?" Chimamanda asked. Miriam knelt beside them, smiling. "Yes, baby. Forever and ever." Khalid bent low and kissed her hand. "No more waiting, no more fear. You're mine, Miriam, and I'm yours." Marriage had come like a warm embrace, unexpected but healing. Yet, no matter how far you fly or how high love lifts you, the past always finds a way to knock on your door. Miriam learned that on a bright Thursday morning, inside one of Dubai's largest malls, she was holding Chimamanda's hand while shopping for school shoes. The triplets had adjusted well, speaking a mix of Hausa, English, and a few Arabic words they were learning. As she turned into the next aisle, her steps froze. There, standing near the perfume display, was someone she never expected to see again. Kalechi, her ex, the man who had walked out of her life when she told him she was pregnant, leaving her to raise 3 children alone. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Miriam?" he asked, stepping closer. She stood tall, holding Chimamanda's hand tighter. "What are you doing here?" I live here now," he said, shocked. "I came for a job with a shipping company 2 years ago. But you, what are you doing in Dubai?" She smiled softly, but firmly. "Living, thriving." He looked down and saw the child by her side. "Is she?" "My daughter," Miriam interrupted. "One of 3. Kalechi blinked, a bitter chuckle rising in his throat. You really had triplets. I always thought you were lying. Miriam's jaw clenched. Chimamanda looked up at her mother, confused. Mummy, who is this man? Miriam knelt and smiled gently. Just someone who once walked away. Kalechi stood still as she walked past him, her head held high. That night, she told Khalid. He didn't speak at first. His hand gently brushed her cheek. Did he threaten you? No, she said. But it reminded me that no matter how far I've come, my scars still exist. Khalid pulled her into an embrace. Then let me love you, scars and all. She leaned into his chest. I don't want anything from him. He's not their father. You are now. I am, he agreed. And I always will be. The next week, a letter arrived at their estate. Kalechi had somehow found the address. Miriam, seeing you again shook something in me. I realize now what I threw away. I want to meet my children. I want to make things right. Miriam sat in silence. Then, she ripped the letter in half and threw it into the fireplace. She whispered, You lost that right when you chose to abandon us. The life Miriam stepped into as Khalid's wife was nothing short of breathtaking, but it wasn't without its shadows, especially now that her name was whispered in Dubai's elite circles. And things were about to get even more complicated. It arrived in the morning, a golden envelope sealed with the insignia of one of the ruling royal families in Abu Dhabi. Khalid opened it slowly, a calm look on his face, until his brows lifted. What is it? Miriam asked, sipping her tea and watching the triplets play with their Lego castle on the marble floor. He handed her the invitation. His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan invites Mr. Khalid Al Rami and Mrs. Miriam Al Rami to the upcoming royal gala, A Night of Stars. Formal appearance requested. Spouses required. Miriam read it twice, then again. They want me to attend? Khalid grinned. Of course. You're my wife. She exhaled slowly, placing the envelope on the table like it might shatter. Khalid, I've never attended anything like this. I don't speak like them. I don't dress like them. What if I embarrass you? He reached across the table, taking her hands in his. You are everything I didn't know I needed. You don't need to be anyone else. Let them meet you. The woman who held herself and her children through storms. The one who lit up my life in an airport lounge. That week, Khalid's personal stylist arrived, followed by etiquette tutors, a language coach, and a designer flown in from Paris. But Miriam insisted on staying true to herself. The final gown was a masterpiece, gold and emerald green, designed to reflect her Nigerian roots, but with elegant folds that whispered of royal grace. The triplets watched her descend the staircase on the evening of the gala. Chitara gasped, Mummy, you look like a queen. Khalid, in a tailored black suit with gold embroidery, offered her his arm. She doesn't just look like one. She is one. Held at the Al Noor Palace, the gala was a display of opulence. Glass chandeliers, fountains that danced to live orchestra music, and a guest list filled with royalty, dignitaries, and celebrities. As they entered the grand hall, conversations paused. Heads turned, not just because of her dress or her beauty, but because Miriam walked beside Khalid with the grace of a woman who had fought, survived, and blossomed. Some whispered, some smiled politely. A few others looked on with subtle disapproval. But none of it mattered. Not when Khalid placed his hand gently on her lower back and whispered, You belong here. During dinner, the sheikh himself approached. He greeted Khalid warmly, then turned to Miriam. I've heard much about you, Mrs. El Rami, a woman who raised triplets on her own, and yet walks taller than most born into wealth. Your strength humbles me. Miriam smiled, her heart pounding. Thank you, Your Highness. You are most welcome in our circle, he said. And your children too. Later that night, on the palace balcony under the moonlight, Khalid whispered, I didn't marry you to fit into my world, Miriam. I married you to build a new one with you. She kissed him softly. Then let's build it with bricks made from love, not fear. They stood there together, no longer billionaire and single mother, but king and queen of their own story. Love had brought Miriam to Dubai. Motherhood had shaped her. But now, something deeper was stirring. A call to turn her scars into seeds, to grow something bigger than herself. It began with a single question from her daughter. "Mummy, what did you want to be?" One lazy Saturday afternoon, while the triplets painted in the garden, Chimamanda looked up and asked, "Mummy, what did you want to be when you were small?" Miriam paused. The brush in her hand hovered over a yellow flower she had been helping Chitara paint. She blinked slowly, as if pulling memories from a long-locked chest. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said softly, "to help little girls believe they could be anything. Like you helped us," Chuka chimed in. Her throat tightened. That night, as Khalid worked in his study, she stood by the window, staring at the stars. Then, as if summoned by a higher purpose, she whispered, "It's time." She named it the Grace Within Foundation, a home, school, and empowerment center for single mothers and underprivileged children across Nigeria and the UAE. With Khalid's full support, they bought land in Abuja and another in Sharjah. The foundation's mission: to provide safe shelter, education, and vocational training for mothers who had nowhere else to turn. The launch was announced quietly, but it went viral. Mother of triplets turned billionaire's wife opens shelter for struggling mothers. Women flooded the inbox, some seeking help, some offering to help, others simply writing, "I read your story. You saved my life." Miriam began traveling between Nigeria and Dubai, personally visiting local villages, schools, and hospitals. She didn't just write checks. She sat with women, cried with them, laughed with their children, and shared her story. People began to see her not as the woman who married wealth, but as a woman who turned her pain into a purpose. And wherever she went, her triplets followed, sometimes sleeping on her lap in airport lounges, just like they did that fateful day years ago. A moment of recognition. At a global women's empowerment summit in Dubai, Miriam was invited to speak. Dressed in a flowing Ankara dress stitched with gold trim, she stood before thousands. "I am not here because I married a billionaire," she began. "I'm here because I survived, because I believed my children deserved better, and because no woman should have to choose between dignity and survival." Her voice cracked, but the standing ovation drowned it out. That night, Khalid held her tighter than usual. "You saved me too, Miriam," he whispered. "I didn't even know I needed saving." She smiled, brushing his cheek. "We saved each other." It was supposed to be a quiet morning. The sun streamed gently through the Al Rami estate's glass walls. Birds chirped softly outside, and Khalid was feeding the triplets their favorite papaya and honey smoothie when his phone buzzed. First, he ignored it. Then came a second buzz, and a third. He picked it up and froze. Billionaire's wife linked to wanted Nigerian fraudster? Kelechi Adigwe claims he fathered Miriam's children, demands DNA test. Khalid read it again, then again. Kelechi. The name alone sent Miriam's body into a cold tremble when he showed her the article. "No," she breathed. "That man. He's lying." He had been a mistake from her past. A man who manipulated her during her most vulnerable days. He had vanished before she gave birth to the triplets, and never reached out again. Now, years later, he was on TV interviews claiming the triplets were his. He said she stole them from him and married a billionaire to hide the truth. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. People questioned everything: her story, her children, her intentions. Some headlines were cruel. Is Miriam El-Rami who she claims to be? From rags to riches. Or deception. Donors to the Grace Within Foundation started pulling back. She received hate mail. Even the triplets overheard whispers at school. Miriam was shattered, but Khalid was a fortress. He stood before every camera, in every press statement, and said, "I know my wife. I know her heart. And if this man wants to bring a storm, let him know we've survived worse." To end the speculation, Khalid demanded a full legal investigation and a court-supervised DNA test. The result? Kelechi was not the father. The court found him guilty of fraud, defamation, and extortion. He had planned to use Miriam's fame for money and blackmail. Khalid had him banned from entering the UAE, and Nigerian authorities locked him up again. Miriam gave a single interview afterward. When people try to use your past against you, remember, it means they fear your future. And with that, the storm passed. Joy came roaring back to the Al-Rami mansion as the triplets' 5th birthday approached. Miriam wanted something intimate. Khalid wanted something magical. So they compromised on a full-blown private beach fairytale party in Dubai, flown in from Nigeria and designed by the best of both worlds. The beach was transformed into a miniature wonderland, a bouncing castle shaped like a lion's den, a small zoo with trained parrots, goats, and a gentle camel, a jollof and shawarma fusion station, a live performance from Nigeria's favorite children's choir. Chuka wore a little agbada. Chidera had a princess dress made of osso oak. Chimamanda ran around barefoot, face painted like a butterfly. Khalid surprised them with mini jet skis. Miriam surprised them with a puppet show starring characters from their favorite bedtime stories. And then came the big gift. Khalid held the mic. "Triplets of my heart," he said, voice choked. "We built you a home, but now we've built something even bigger." He unveiled 3 framed documents. Scholarships in each of their names to attend the international school of their dreams, anywhere they chose when they came of age. The crowd cheered. But the moment that stayed with Miriam forever was when all 3 ran to her at once, hugged her legs tightly, and whispered, "You're the best mummy in the world." 3 weeks after the triplets' birthday, Miriam boarded a plane back to Nigeria. Not in first class this time, but quietly, and without security cameras chasing her heels. She was going back to where it all began, the dusty streets of a Jagunal, the cramped one room she once shared with her triplets, the place she had nearly given up before love found her at Gate 17 of Murtala Muhammad Airport. Returned to her roots. Now she was back, not as a refugee of pain, but as a queen of purpose. Her mission, to break ground on the Grace Within Women's Shelter, a foundation aimed at housing and rehabilitating struggling mothers, pregnant teens, and abandoned children. As she stood on the cleared plot surrounded by reporters and dignitaries, her eyes locked on a familiar face in the crowd. Auntie Nkem, the same aunt who once screamed at her to leave her house, the same woman who told her the triplets were a curse, who had slammed the door in her face during a storm. The awkward reunion. Auntie Nkem shuffled forward hesitantly. "Not true?" she muttered. You be the one building this whole place?" Miriam nodded, eyes cool but not cold. "Yes, ma. But it's for the women coming after me, the ones like me, who had nowhere else to go." Auntie's eyes welled with something unreadable. "I was wrong. I thought you were finished when he left you with those children. I didn't know God was just starting." Miriam smiled sadly. "It's okay, Auntie. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to make sure no other woman knocks on a locked door in her hour of need." They hugged, awkwardly at first, then deeply. The foundation was launched that same day, and the first 20 women moved in a month later. Back in Dubai, Khalid waited at the tarmac, arms wide open as Miriam descended the jet steps. "You did it," he whispered into her neck. "We did it," she corrected, her arms tightening around him. Later that night, as the house grew quiet and the triplets fell asleep, Miriam sat on the balcony with a cup of Zobo tea. Her eyes danced with the stars. "Khalid," she said softly, "have you ever wondered if our home has more room?" He blinked. "Room? You mean like a gym?" She laughed. "No, I mean, maybe for another little heartbeat." Unexpected news. Khalid nearly dropped his wine glass. "You're pregnant?" Miriam laughed again. "Not yet. I've been thinking about it. The triplets are 5. They'd love a younger sibling. And I miss that flutter, that first kick, that hope." Khalid was quiet. Then he reached over and placed a hand gently on her stomach. "I think our family has just enough love left to grow again." A silent prayer. That night, as they lay curled together, Khalid whispered a prayer under his breath. Not for riches, not for fame, but for one more miracle to join their story. The morning sun in Dubai was gentle, brushing golden rays across the mansion's cream walls. Miriam stood at the bathroom sink, toothbrush forgotten in hand, eyes locked on 2 pink lines. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply smiled. A full, slow, knowing smile. "We're going to have a baby," she whispered to her reflection. At dinner, she slipped a tiny baby onesie onto the table instead of dessert. Chuka stared. "What's this? A dog shirt?" Chimamanda guessed. "No," Miriam said, her voice soft with emotion. "It's for your baby brother or sister." For a moment, the room was silent. Then the triplets exploded in delight, dancing around the table. Khalid watched them, blinking quickly. "Another heartbeat," he murmured. "Our miracle." But at 12 weeks, things changed. Miriam fainted while preparing for a Grace Within gala. She woke up in a hospital bed, Khalid gripping her hand like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. "The doctor says your womb is weaker this time," he said, trying to sound strong. "They're putting you on bed rest immediately." Tears stung her eyes. "Will the baby?" "They're hopeful," he said. "But no stress. None. You need complete peace." Which was why what happened next shook them both. The headlines came suddenly, hitting the internet like a sandstorm. Khalid Al-Fahim's company accused of environmental violation in Nigeria. Grace Within allegedly linked to corrupt land deals. Though the foundation had nothing to do with the scandal, Khalid's name was plastered across blogs, newspapers, and media stations in both Dubai and Lagos. Suddenly, donors began withdrawing. Partners backed off. Journalists stalked the gates of their home. And protesters appeared outside the Grace Within Center in Abuja. "Don't tell her," Khalid whispered to security. "She can't take this stress right now." But Miriam wasn't naive. She saw the panic in the staff's eyes, the silence in Khalid's voice, the news notifications flashing on the iPad she wasn't supposed to touch. That night, she looked him in the eye. "What's going on?" Khalid sighed. "Some of my staff used one of our companies to acquire land illegally. I didn't know, Miriam. But now, everyone thinks we're frauds." He added, "And they're dragging your name into it." The next morning, despite doctor's orders, Miriam called a press conference from their sitting room. Dressed in flowing white and seated between Khalid and the triplets, she spoke. "I did not marry a perfect man. I married a man who builds, who dreams, and who owns up to his mistakes. If we are investigated, we will cooperate. If anything illegal occurred, we will fix it. But let it be clear, Grace Within was built on pain, not profit. We will not abandon the women who depend on us. We will not be silenced by fear." The world listened. Some sneered, but most applauded. After the storm, in the weeks that followed, Khalid's team worked tirelessly to clear his name. The corrupt managers were arrested, public apologies were issued, and investors slowly returned. One morning, as Miriam lay in bed with a soft smile on her face, she turned to Khalid and whispered, "The storm passed," and just as she said it, she felt the flutter, the tiny kick of a baby within. The Grace Within annual gala was the most anticipated event of the year. Women from across Nigeria and the Gulf attended to share stories of survival, growth, and new beginnings. This year, it was held in Lagos, Miriam's idea, to honor her roots. She was 32 weeks pregnant. The doctor had advised against travel, but Shed insisted. "It'll be fine. I won't speak, I'll just sit on stage. I have to be there." Khalid wasn't convinced, but he flew with her, never more than 2 feet away, protective like a shield. The moment everything changed. The event was beautiful. There were soft lights, drums, praise songs in Hausa and Igbo, and women whose smiles spoke volumes of the healing they had found. But midway through the evening, just as the MC introduced Miriam for a brief wave to the audience, she stood up and gasped. A sudden wetness spread down her dress. Her eyes widened. "Khalid." He caught her before she collapsed. The triplets screamed from the front row as their mother was carried off stage. In the ambulance, Khalid held her hand tightly. "Just breathe. Don't talk. I'm here. I'm here." She gritted her teeth through the pain, sweat pouring down her brow. The doctor at the hospital didn't sugarcoat it. "The baby's coming early. We'll do all we can." Miriam was wheeled into the delivery room. Khalid wasn't allowed inside. He stood outside the doors, fists clenched. whispering prayers in Arabic and English and Hausa. After what felt like forever, the cry of a baby pierced through the corridor. Then silence. Then another cry, louder, fiercer. The doctor emerged. She's fine, tiny, but strong. You can see them both now. Khalid walked into the room like a man returning from war. Miriam, pale but smiling, looked up at him and whispered. She came early, but she came strong. He leaned down, kissed her forehead, and turned to look at the baby girl wrapped in soft pink. She looks like you, he said, brushing the baby's cheek. She's going to be a lioness. Triplets meet baby sister. When the triplets entered the hospital room the next morning, they stared at the baby like she was a princess from a fairy tale. She's so tiny, Chimamanda said. But her fists are big, Chuka added. Can we call her Zara? Chidabem asked. Miriam and Khalid looked at each other, then nodded. Zara al-Fahim, Khalid said. Our early flower. Homecoming. They flew back to Dubai a month later, with Zara safely in her mother's arms, and the triplets surrounding them like bodyguards. Life was no longer quiet, but it was fuller than ever. Khalid often stood at the doorway, watching his wife surrounded by 4 giggling children, his heart swelling with something he couldn't put into words. Love, home, peace, all wrapped in one woman. The desert stretched endlessly, golden and glowing under the soft embrace of the evening sun. The wind whispered secrets only the dunes could understand. Khalid had planned the getaway as a surprise. No staff, no drivers, no phones. Just them, his wife and 4 children, his whole world in a single frame. They drove in a modest jeep to a private section of the Dubai desert, near Al Marmum. There, a cozy tent awaited, nestled between 2 large dunes with soft rugs, cushions, fruit platters, and a portable camera on a tripod. It was time to capture a new memory. As the sun began to set, casting amber light over the sand, Khalid gently wrapped a scarf over baby Zara's head and placed her in Miriam's arms. The triplets ran around, barefoot, chasing each other and drawing hearts in the sand. Miriam laughed, her face glowing with life, not makeup. Her abaya flowed like the wind itself. Khalid looked at them and whispered to himself, God, how did I get this lucky? He took the camera and set the timer. He ran to join them, his arms around Miriam, the triplets hugging his legs, Zara cradled in her mother's hands. Click. One perfect moment captured forever. Later that night, after the kids had eaten and dozed off under the stars, Khalid and Miriam lay on the sand beside the crackling fire, wrapped in a shared blanket. Miriam turned to him. You've given me so much. You gave me life, he said softly, and love, and for miracles. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you ever think about her? He blinked, confused. My mother, she clarified. Khalid paused. Only when I look at you, because she'd be proud of the woman you are. Miriam smiled with tears in her eyes. She used to tell me, no matter how rough life gets, don't let it bury your kindness. She didn't just raise a kind woman, Khalid said. She raised a queen. Before leaving, Miriam picked up the camera one last time. She set it to video mode and recorded the sleeping children. Then she turned it to herself and whispered, One day when you all grow up and wonder what love looked like. Watch this. She turned the camera toward Khalid and whispered, This was the man who loved us all completely. Then she smiled and stopped the recording. They left behind nothing but footprints in the sand. But their love, captured in that portrait, would echo forever. Days after their desert retreat, Miriam found herself rummaging through an old box she had brought from Lagos. The only thing she'd carried when she left Nigeria for Dubai with nothing but hope and her children. Inside the box, buried beneath baby socks and faded photos, was an envelope, unopened, unsent. Her handwriting scrawled across it. To Mama in heaven. She hesitated, then opened it and began to read. Dear Mama, you once told me that a woman's strength isn't in how much she carries, but in what she lets go of. I never understood that, until life forced me to let go of the life I thought I deserved. I lost everything, even dignity. But you were right. When I let go, something beautiful found me. His name is Khalid. He's not just a man. He's my peace. He saw me when I was invisible. He saw worth when I didn't. He became father to my children and partner to my soul. Mama, I kept your voice alive in my heart. It led me to safety, to love, to home. I love you always. Your daughter, Miriam. Tears fell freely onto the paper. She folded the letter, placed it near Zara's crib, and kissed her daughter's cheek. You'll know your grandmother, even if you never met her. Years passed. Zara turned 5. The triplets became teenagers, vibrant, clever, and full of charm. The Grace Within Foundation had expanded to 6 countries. Miriam sat on its global board. Khalid had stepped away from aggressive business to focus on philanthropy. But the biggest moment came when Chimamanda, now 12, stood in front of an auditorium in Dubai to speak on behalf of the foundation's junior girls. My mummy says love doesn't always come when you want it, but it comes when you need it most, and that sometimes family is made, not just born. Khalid held Miriam's hand as tears gathered in his eyes. They had raised 4 incredible children, not perfectly, but with patience, sacrifice, and deep love. And now the story was no longer just theirs. On the 15th anniversary of the day they met at the Nigerian airport, Khalid flew Miriam and their children, now teenagers and one nearly an adult, on the very same jet he had offered her long ago. They retraced the flight route from Lagos to Dubai, but this time, the aircraft was full of laughter, music, and stories. At cruising altitude, Khalid stood and raised a toast. To the day a mother of 3 sat in the wrong section of an airport and changed my life forever. Miriam smiled. To the man who saw beyond my chaos and gave me the sky. They kissed, gently, deeply, above the clouds. Triplets in the sky, once just passengers in fate's wild journey, were now heirs of a legacy stitched in faith, healing, and love. And the stars, outside the window, blinked in approval.